25 years on from the one country, two systems policy, Chinese President Xi Jinping says there's no reason to change it. Some relief at last for Singapore's drivers, pump prices sliding for the first time since April. And starting today, smoking will no longer be allowed at all public parks. This is The Big Story with me, Olivia Quay. Remember to subscribe to the Straits Times channel so you never miss an episode. In a clear message to the world, China President Xi Jinping says the one country, two systems policy of governing Hong Kong is here to stay. He was speaking at the swearing-in ceremony of the new Hong Kong government as the city marks 25 years since returning to Chinese rule.
I wish to highlight once more that the policy of one country, two systems, having been tested and proved time and again, meets the fundamental interests of the country and the Chinese nation, and those of Hong Kong and Macau. It enjoys the full support of the more than 1.4 billion people of the motherland. It has the unanimous endorsement of Hong Kong and Macau residents, and it is widely recognized by the international community. There is no reason to change such a good system, and it must be adhered to over the long run.
Earlier, we also saw John Lee being sworn in as Hong Kong Chief Executive. And in his speech afterwards, he says that the rule of law is a fundamental value for Hong Kong. And the national security law has brought stability to the city after anti-government protests in 2019. Well, those 2019 protests were a defining moment for Hong Kong. Nearly 2 million people took to the streets against a proposed extradition bill that would allow for criminal suspects to be sent to China to face trial. Following months of unrest, then Chief Executive Carrie Lam withdrew the bill in September that year. In June 2020, Beijing imposed a national security law on Hong Kong, giving the mainland sweeping powers to curb dissent. The law effectively bans the sort of protests that rocked the city in 2019, criminalizing subversion and colluding with foreign forces. We're happy to welcome Associate Professor Alfred Wu from NUS's Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy. So, Professor, under the one country, two systems policy, Hong Kong was promised 50 years of self-government and freedoms of assembly, speech and press unseen in mainland China. But the opposite has happened, with China tightening its grip on Hong Kong. So what do the next 25 years look like? And if 25 years is too far off, how about the next 10, 5 years even?
If you look into Hong Kong's situation in the past 5 years, Hong Kong has changed rapidly because of China is very assertive about Hong Kong's public policies. So in the past, they promised that Hong Kong will have all autonomy except foreign affairs and defense. But now, if you look into like COVID management, Hong Kong is actually listen to Beijing's orders. So they no more exercise their own autonomy. So in the next 10 years, you will see the same change. So Hong Kong will not actually be very different from Shenzhen and also rest of China. Then Hong Kong will emphasize on economic growth. They will showcase they are doing very well economically. Then Hong Kong's rich people will be getting rich. Then poor people will have much more difficulty in the future. That's the very much system apply in China, then it will apply to Hong Kong.
Well, in his speech today, China President Xi Jinping says Hong Kong must uphold harmony and stability in pursuit of a better life. It cannot afford chaos and must focus on development regardless of interference. Professor Wu, what does this mean for the people of Hong Kong?
Mainland China's main hypothesis is the regime stability is number one. So no protest, no chaotic situation. Then people focus on economic development. They just earn their money. That's their own model. So Xi Jinping also emphasized this point to Hong Kong people, asked Hong Kong people to very much focus on economic development while ignoring other things like human rights, freedom of speech. But I would say that under this system, the problem about inequality and the poverty issue will be worsened in the near future.
Professor Wu, could you elaborate on Hong Kong's poverty problem?
If you look into Hong Kong's poverty statistics, Hong Kong's relative poverty is very, very big concern. Out of 7 million people, now Hong Kong has 1.5 million of poor people. When the chief executive, Carrie Lam, took office, she promised to tackle this issue because she also had experience of handling poverty issue when she was Secretary for Welfare. But now the problem is over the past 5 years, Hong Kong had more and more poor people. The number of poor people increased from 1.2 million people to 1.5 million people. So this is a very big challenge for Johnny to take. But in the meantime, I don't see any immediate solution for this because of overall, Hong Kong's situation will be very much similar to China. Income inequality will increase, then relative poverty will increase as well.
Well, speaking of John Lee, today marks his tenure as chief executive. Now he's pledged to unite Hong Kong for a new chapter. But Professor Wu, how different would his administration be from Mrs. Carrie Lam's?
His background is with law enforcement. Then he will implement the policy very fast. And also, he will uphold Beijing's top priority on national security. So he will try to prevent Hong Kong from having deep and also substantial contact with the Western world. So Hong Kong is no longer a bridge between the West and the East. Hong Kong will be a city for China, and also Hong Kong will have a lot of business with mainland China, particularly on the financial side. But in the meantime, I'm quite worried about Hong Kong's housing issue. Although Johnny said that he wants to tackle Hong Kong's housing issue. If you look into statistics, Singaporeans have 80% of public housing, but in Hong Kong, only 40% of people live in rental housing. Then 10% of people bought public housing. So in total, the percentage of public housing in Hong Kong is about 50%. Then a lot of people stay in tiny space. Many people are queuing up for public housing for more than 5 years. Then they stay in cage house. It means that when you go back home, you only can actually allow you to stay in your bedroom. Then no other space for you to do your homework or do other things. This situation is worse around the world. Hong Kong's housing price is highest in the world. Then many poor people live in very, very tiny space. But at the very beginning, I would say Johnny may have a capacity to handle the issue in the near future because Johnny have very strong power to persuade different stakeholders. But in the long run, I'm not very optimistic because of Hong Kong still rely on land financing. Land financing means the government's revenue rely a lot on land revenue. Then if government want more revenue, they will actually increase the land price then housing price will increase as well. So eventually, combined with the other factor, ordinary people or poor people in the future will have a lot of difficulties associated with the housing issue.
Well, many thanks for those insights. Associate Professor Alfred Wu there at the Kuan School of Public Policy at NUS. Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong congratulating President Xi Jinping. In a letter, PM Lee writes about Singapore's relations with both China and Hong Kong. Quote, as global cities in our respective regions, Singapore and Hong Kong enjoy close and multifaceted relations. Singapore also shares extensive and substantial ties with mainland China. This close partnership between Singapore and China has kept pace with the times. About 950,000 Singaporean households living in public flats will receive their second quarterly GST voucher, U-Save and Service and Conservancy Charges rebates this month. Payouts will range from $110 to $190 for the U-Save vouchers and half a month or 1 month in SNCC rebates, with a total of $720 million to be dispersed this financial year. Good news for drivers as well. Fuel pump prices are dipping across several brands for the first time since April. According to Fuel Kaki, Caltex, Esso and Shell dropped posted prices mostly by 2 to 4 cents a litre. The two Chinese companies, Sinopec and SPC, have yet to adjust their prices but are expected to follow suit soon. The latest adjustment makes Esso the least expensive fuel and Caltex the costliest. From COVID-19 to smoking, there are new rules kicking in today. Let's first look at the changes to the medical fees for COVID-19 patients. Subsidies will revert to pre-pandemic prices, and that includes removing the flat fee of $5 to $10 for respiratory infections, as well as any telemedicine subsidies for patients with mild symptoms who are recovering at home. Emergency department charges will also no longer be waived in all cases. Full subsidies will only be applicable to those who require hospital admission or treatment at a dedicated facility. Also from today, smoking is banned at all public parks, 10 recreational beaches, including 3 on Sentosa, as well as some water sites like canals, lakes and rivers. But enforcement will only start in October to give smokers time to adjust to the new rules. The ban was first announced in March as part of Singapore's efforts to clamp down on smoking and tackle second-hand tobacco smoke. Well, those are our top stories today. You can, of course, visit straitstimes.com for more news and our YouTube channel for more videos. Subscribe by hitting the red button below. I leave you now with a short clip from the SAF Day Parade at the South Military Institute. Today also marks 55 years of national service in Singapore.